joining us on another LinkedIn Live with Ascend Nonprofit and Business Solutions. I'm so thankful and grateful that you guys tune in every other weekend to spend some, morning cafecito with us and go over all things Ascend NBS. So I don't know about you guys, but this week has just been it just flew by. I can't believe we're already on Friday. So I hope you guys enjoy your weekend, but for now, we'll get into our series on Procurement Readiness 101. And so last week, we had our first episode on the Procurement 101. So if you have not checked that out, you don't have to watch them back to back in order to understand like the series or anything. So if you haven't, you can go check that out. It is on our YouTube page, Ascend NBS. And we also have it on our LinkedIn page as well under Dr. Siller's profile. So you can watch those rewinds, like it, comment, and we're always taking a look at those. So today we're getting into more of the Is Your Business Procurement Ready? So this is part 2 of that because understanding procurement is one thing, and knowing whether your business is actually ready to compete for a contract is another. So today is about looking in the mirror. Do you have the system, the documentation, and the capacity to win? And if you don't know yet, how do you get there? So with that, I'm America Cervantes. I'm the admin assistant and marketing strategist here at Ascend NBS. And as always, we have our founder and CEO, Dr. Arlene Siller, with her knowledge and expertise with us this Friday morning. And with that, I will get us into question number 1, which is last episode, you said something that stuck with me and other people because people commented on our LinkedIn posts and stuff. You said registration is not the same as readiness. So let's define it head on. What does procurement ready actually mean? When you say business is ready, what are you really saying?
So first, I want to apologize to everyone. I am going to be doing this periodically until my eye stops itching. I woke up this morning and it's just been crazy itchy. So I apologize, but nothing I can do about it. We're just going to move on. Okay, so in terms of readiness, it really is just that state of having your documentation, your systems in place, understanding the capacity of your business to be able to do what is in the RFP within the time frame that it's given for that particular contract. Do you have the processes in place to compete and really deliver when the opportunity drops? So it's making sure we have all of those things in place prior to. This is a contract that you're entering into with whatever entity is looking for your products or services. And so if it's products, are you at scale to be able to deliver with the quantity that they're looking for within whatever time period that they state in the RFP? Everything is different. On the services side, if they're at 15 things in the scope of work and their expectation is that you do all 15, or that you do 13 out of the 15 and maybe you have to bring in another consultant or a sub. But either way, in either situation, whether you're doing all of it or you are in partnership with others, whatever business is putting in the proposal for that RFP and wins that contract and signs the contract, you're responsible for all of the individuals that work for your company and anyone that you partner with. So do we have the proper systems in place, even from a subcontracting situation where we have MOU, we have really good understanding, that company or person that we're working with really understands how to deliver as well. They're not kind of just operating on their own time or completing their portion of the scope of work whenever they feel like it. There's time frames associated with this. So we want to make sure that we have good people to work with on these, especially when we're putting our business on the line as far as that contract is concerned, because whoever is the prime on that is really the responsible entity. So registration really just gets you in the door with whatever agency is looking for your products or services, but readiness is what's really going to help you win those contracts that changes the trajectory for your business. It's competitive readiness, meaning that you put together a winning response, but it's also operational readiness, and that's the can you deliver within the time frame and for the dollar amount that you put in for that. And so that's another component that's really important, is understanding the costs of what you do so that your budget is accurate, that you submit at the time of the proposal. So I feel like a lot of businesses just like need to, reframe their thinking here. Their procurement departments or agencies are not just buying your products or service. They're really looking for that confidence that you can perform and that you're going to get this work done. They need this done. They don't have the capability in-house, which is why they put out the RFP. And so can you deliver on that is really what they're looking for.
Thank you. And I know in our last LinkedIn, you touched on that in the part of like what Ascend MBS can do when it comes to like the readiness portion. Do you think you can speak to that part?
So readiness, I'm sorry, it's really itching. So in terms of what Ascend can do, I know this is annoying. Sorry, people. It's really annoying for me. So in terms of readiness and what Ascend can help you do. So, we do an assessment of your company, ensuring that you really understand the process of what you have if you're a service-based business, how you do it, what's your expertise in doing that, meaning previous projects that we can really deliver on and discuss. We go through your documentation, your certifications, registration, just making sure you're registered properly. Sometimes RFPs will have you register in 2 different portals. And a company may think, okay, well, I'm registered with this city, as an example, but they also have like another registration. Maybe you also have to do a sam.gov and you didn't know that, right? So reviewing the RFP or NOFO or, RFQ, we help do that. And then just making you aware of where you need to be registered. You go and do that as a business owner. We can help you through that process, but we don't register for you because there's a lot of personal and business information that goes in there. So it's really important that you go and do it. If you have certifications and things like that, we'll make sure that that is always mentioned. A capability statement as well, your financials as far as helping with a budget and really understanding the costs, because every agency also asks for budgets in different ways. Sometimes it's on a project basis, sometimes it's hourly. So it just depends. Making sure that you meet the minimum insurance requirements. So letting you know what those are, and then, presenting that to you as a business and making sure that you have that or you're willing to get it if awarded. And then really focusing on your past performance and your references, because that's really key. And then also looking at your capability, so your resources internally, whether that be personnel, equipment, space, and any of those kinds of things. If it's a product, do you have the ability to scale and deliver on that is another thing. And then we also look at the basics of your operation, so policies and procedures and systems that you have in place to be able to manage that contract if you were awarded. And so this is, again, all of the stuff that needs to be done before you just apply. And you can get your business into a lot of trouble. If you apply, you get awarded, and you don't have some of these things in place, especially if, for example, you had to hire people in order to, to do the work, because you've got to scale that way. Well, hiring can take, a couple of months. And if we haven't really considered that, you're going to be behind in terms of your deliverables. And so those are some things that, we want to make sure you understand. You have the ability to do it. You've got a pool of people maybe to pull from if, if that were to happen. So, on the flip side of it, reviewers of these documents can really tell who's prepared and who's just scrambled and thrown something together. And so we just want to make sure that you're properly prepared to pursue the ones that really are a good fit for your company.
Thank you. And if you're interested in just learning more about what Dr. Siller was talking about, if you scan the QR code at the top, it is going to have different items that we can help with. If you scroll to the bottom of it, there's a button that says like Start Procurement. You can click it. It'll take you to our website, give you information. Or if you're like, I'm ready to start working with you guys, you can click the Let's Get Started, and it'll take you to an intake survey. You fill that out, and one of our team members from Ascend will reach out to you with next steps. So I just wanted to plug that in there real quick. I will continue going on with the questions, but like I said, if you're interested in any of our services, not just procurement, you can scan the QR code. Moving into the next question, when a contracting agency looks at a business, what are the foundational things they expect to see? What does ready look like on paper?
Readiness on paper looks like, according to the RFP and the scope of work that they're looking for, you have the right people in place to do this work. Again, you may need to hire for some of the positions. So thinking through that and what that would look like, that you have considered the deliverables within the time frame of that particular scope of work. Sometimes I've seen scope of works be 6 months. Sometimes there'll be up to 3 years and then 2 additional years after that. So every single one of them looks different. But do you have the right team in place to be able to get it done? That you have a clear understanding of what the deliverables are within the timeline that you set or they set according to the scope of work. Have you adequately priced the work that you're doing? Can you deliver on the products or the services? Do you have this experience? So I think this is one of the other things, is that sometimes people are afraid to apply because they're like, I've only done it 1 or 2 other times. And that's okay. I mean, we all have to start somewhere, right? So I think just being able to explain, and sometimes the work that we've done in the past has not been in this particular area. It could be, I'll give you an example for us. We do a lot of training on the grant side. So the full spectrum and life cycle of grant management. And it is very similar to procurement, right? So when we were first writing for contracts on the procurement side of being able to do training, I had to really talk a lot about what our training was on the grant side, but not just focused on grant. I had to make the foundation of the training relatable to what they were looking for in the scope of work for procurement. So that's, when you don't have this extensive experience in this particular area, in my example, procurement, you want to talk about how your experiences on other things, So the other thing too is that I do a lot of training for small businesses as well. So I was able to bring the small business training, the grant training, and there's some fundamental frameworks of just training that goes, it doesn't matter what subject matter you're teaching on, right? Or you're training on. There's just some fundamental frameworks that are consistent regardless of the subject matter. And so that was some of the first things that we had to do. And so then once we got the experience of actually, training for procurement, then we could specifically mention those examples, past projects, and have references for those things. So it takes a while to build it when you haven't done it before, but we want to really focus on what are those experiences that you've had before. How are they extremely relevant to the scope of work that's laid out in this particular RFP or NOFO, the announcement, and then draw on that. And if you've actually done the work in this particular area, like janitorial services, like this is what you've been doing, then we really want to talk about the executing on those services for the type of organization that you're applying to. So for example, if you're doing janitorial and maybe you've done it on small commercial buildings, maybe you've done a bank, and maybe you have had a project with a museum, and now you're wanting to respond to a larger museum. We definitely want to talk about your work with a museum before in terms of your janitorial services, but we do want to bring in the others, right? Because obviously from a banking perspective, there probably was a lot more rigorous background check that went into that than say a commercial building at night or something like that. So we want to be able to show that your company is able to do this work for many different types of clients, but we talk about first the one that's most relatable to the agency that you're applying to right now. And any of the other things that made those other projects unique, like the banking example, for example, is then we want to talk about and highlight those differences that really show you won this contract with with some very specific and unique requirements associated with that. So always, drawing from your experience as much as we possibly can, but also understanding that it's not always, a one for one and exactly, a perfect previous examples for the ones that are current, but we always want to relate it back to the scope of work and then ensuring from a writing perspective that we're getting the maximum points in that particular question or subsection that they're asking for.
Thank you. We also got a comment from Lennon. He put, excited that you are going beyond just nonprofits. The information is literal gold. Thank you so much, Lennon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Yes, like Dr. Siller said last time, this isn't a new thing that we've added. We've been doing it. We just hadn't showcased it. So we really wanted to highlight that was one of the services that we had been offering. So moving into question number 3, here, so what are the most common readiness gaps that you see cost people a shot at a contract?
I think some of the things are, first, thoroughly reading the solicitation requirements and understanding them. And I get it. They read like stereo instructions and they have this legalese language to it that most of us are not attorneys and kind of don't get it. Or we're not in procurement. And so there's some language, terminology, phrases that are very foreign to us. And so it can be very difficult as a business owner to understand that. And but there's lots of things. That's one of the ways in which Ascend can help you is when you become a client of ours, we can review the solicitation for you. give you a summary that breaks down what they're looking for in terms of the scope of work and understanding the compliance requirements for this particular thing. So everything, from insurance, registration, the do's and don'ts of what you can do should you be awarded, because there's a lot of those as well. So really just so you understand what you're getting yourself into, not just, hey, this is a great opportunity. I'm a great fit. I can do this work. I want to bring in the money. It's a contract. And so we want to make sure that you thoroughly understand that part. So I would say the gap is usually not completely reading the solicitation requirements, not understanding that when they do put limits, like things on insurance. I went through this not too long ago with a client who had insurance, but his thresholds were much smaller than this particular RFP required. And so, we had to make it known to him, you're going to have to get additional insurance if you win this. Are you okay with that before we move on? And then, he contacted his insurance agency, found out, what the if he increased the limit, should he be awarded? What would that cost him? And, he found out it was very feasible. So he was okay to move forward. But, sometimes it just depends. You might have to have a bond in place. You might have to have a line of credit. You might have to have all those things. So it's important that you really understand what the requirements are that you would be signing yourself into a contractual obligation to. So I think it really, really starts there. I know those documents are extremely painful to read, but that's really one of the areas that you can get our help. Don't skim over it. It's really important that you understand, what will be the requirements should you be awarded. And then the next thing, in line with that is the compliance readiness. If you're awarded, and there are a lot of things that you can put into the proposal that should we be awarded, we'll do this, and should we be awarded, we'll do that. And those things are okay. But if we're awarded, now we've got to act on all those things, right? So we got to make sure that we're prepared for whatever we said we would do in order for us to not only sign that contract, but to keep it. So that's important. And then you've got to have a solid proposal strategy, really look at that scope of work. What do you do best? And we want to highlight that. If we need to bring in someone else to really back up your proposal and help you in terms of completing the scope of work, we want to make sure that that's a good partner, that they also have a history of completing projects on time and within budget, that they're going to execute on the deliverables, and that they're not going to be a pain to you in this whole process, right? We want to make sure that that partnership is a solid one. And so we need a really good proposal strategy. It's not just, well, this is what we do, just copy and paste that into it. You're literally writing to the scope of work and the rubric. You're not writing just what you want to write about your company. You're writing to the scope of work, and that's something that's really important. I'm also going to go back just a minute on the solicitation requirements. These things are confusing. You will find that on, page 6, it says something, and on page 19, it says something else. I'll give you an example. There's a form, it's called a 1295. And in this particular solicitation, at the beginning of the document, it said that the 1295 was required for submission. But then in the scope of work section and the putting together the actual package, it said the 1295 would be required if awarded. So they contradicted each other, right? So the other thing in terms of the solicitation requirements is if they have a mandatory meeting that you have to attend, it's mandatory, so you have to attend it, right? If they don't, they have a meeting, but it's not mandatory, I would still attend it. And if not, sometimes they will send out a link for to the playback of it, the video. So I would definitely watch that. But the other thing too would be the questions period that you have. So because these things often contradict, you want to make sure that you get your questions answered. So making sure that you meet the deadline for the questions. So that's the other really important part of the solicitation requirements is oftentimes the people who write these really have no idea how to get the work done. They know in general what they need done, but they don't know the specifics. And so oftentimes in these solicitations, they're going to leave information out. And, on their side, it's hard to think of everything and write it in. And these things are already, like 80 plus pages, right? It could end up being a lot more. So that's what the question period is for. And also getting really clear on anything with budgets, any other attachments or requirements. So again, just going back to the first thing of really reading and understanding the solicitation requirements. The other thing is, if there's required certifications, making sure that those are up to date and we have those. Any other business documentation that they're going to require, especially your financials, that's another important thing, that we have all of the proper registration. And again, remember that registering on the portal is just a first step. It does not in any way, mean that you're going to get the contract. There's this whole other process of responding to the RFP that's important. And then registering is important because if this particular procurement department or agency has below the threshold opportunities, those aren't necessarily going to result in an RFP. And so you just being registered as a business with certain codes will get that information about opportunities. So it is important to register, but it's not the only step in the process, especially for the larger contracts that they have to put out to the public that are going to result in an RFP.
And we've been posting some polls. Dr. Siller has been posting polls on her LinkedIn. And the poll that we did last week was, if you could change one thing about government procurement, what would it be? The top response was simpler requirements. It was 70%. We need simpler requirements. And right behind it was digital submission only. And then behind that one was faster award decisions. So just right on point to what you were saying. Mm-hmm. We're going to continue on with the polls. So if you go to Dr. Siller's page, she's posting polls weekly, I would say, on different topics, especially procurement. So if you can, just take a look at that and mark your response. That way we could take a look at it and make sure that we're guiding our conversation on our LinkedIn Lives, depending on kind of where you guys are at and what you guys are choosing. So we can definitely hone in on some of the painful parts of this process. We're coming up near the end of our LinkedIn Live. Our last question was essentially what Dr. Siller already covered at the beginning, is like, how can Ascend MBS make this process easier? Dr. Siller, do you have anything else that you want to add before we close up for today's live?
Procurement is, it can be very rewarding for your business, but it is challenging just the way the whole system is set up. And as a small business owner, it can be even more daunting with all of the other responsibilities and things that you have in place. So having an agency like ours in your pocket to help you with this really can take a lot of the stress out of it. It's not just the writing, it's the management of the whole process. It's all of the attachments. It's every little checkbox just for submission, but then also having, a very competitive proposal all of that together with the work that you have to do on a daily basis for your business can be a lot. And that's really where we can help you. And that's what we're looking to do, is to be able to provide you those services to help move the needle on your business revenue.
Awesome. So today's takeaway is registration does not mean that you are ready, and most businesses don't find that out until they lost a bid. So if at any point during today's live you were wondering where your business actually stands, that and you don't know, you can reach out to us. Like I said, we have that QR code, or you can go to ascendmbs.com. We have a bids and proposals tab at the very top, and we can get you started on the procurement readiness assessment. That is the starting point for every engagement that we run. And then we also, along with today's live, we have a procurement readiness checklist. It is linked below. So if you're interested in that, you can click the link, sign your name, and then it'll send you the PDF to grab that checklist. So we will are excited for the next LinkedIn Live that we will have for you guys. Stay connected so that you can know which topic we're going to be conversating next time. And then, like I said earlier, Dr. Siller is posting some polls on her LinkedIn. Please vote so that way we can tailor our LinkedIn Lives based on the audience that is connecting with us and following with us. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you guys have a great Friday. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.